Hello, I'm State Senator Susan Moran, and on today's episode of In Your Corner, we'll be talking about the decommissioning of the Pilgrim nuclear power station here in Plymouth Bay and its environmental, economic, and public health impacts to the region. I'm so excited to hear what our guests have to say, so let's get started here on In Your Corner. We're joined today by two individuals very familiar with the ins and outs of Plymouth Bay. First up, we have Chad Hunter. Hi, Chad.
How are you?
Really good.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. First, I wonder if you could tell folks about the role of Harbor Master.
That's a great question, and we get that quite often because harbor masters are a very unique to the New England area for the most part. So in Plymouth, we obviously see a lot of tourism, and that's kind of the first question, like, what is a harbor master and what do you do? So we're responsible for really all of the harbor-centric pieces that occur in Plymouth. Probably one of our most important duties is search and rescue. So any boating emergencies that happen on the water, we respond out and try and help people and mitigate those circumstances. Obviously, prevention and enforcement of boating safety and environmental laws as well. And we really focus on an educational piece because really in Massachusetts there's no boating safety education requirements. So just last week we actually had a boating safety class and we're able to educate 20 new boaters. So we definitely focus a lot on education. Protection of the natural resources, the harbor, any of the embayments, ponds. Plymouth obviously has our share of ponds. So anything either in the pond or in the surrounding area that could affect the pond, that also falls in our wheelhouse. Management of harbor infrastructure, so anything from piers, boat ramps to dredging, all of that infrastructure needs maintenance and improvements, and we've actually been quite successful in the last 5 years to have a lot of projects that were quite overdue.
That's amazing. Like, in other words, you're partly responsible for the Mayflower actually
Correct.
being here. Oh, that's terrific.
So that was a big push. Obviously, dredging the Mayflower berth was one of the partnerships with Army Corps in the state to make that happen and make it safe for the Mayflower to return. So all of those pieces, making sure that the harbor thrives and is available to not only deeper draft boats like the Mayflower, but more your commercial fishing. We make sure that that continues and supports the local economy.
So there's a public safety piece, there's a tourism piece, there's a sort of environmental piece, there's animal health and in the water, all of that. What other departments do you usually liaison with, or what other agencies?
So it is quite varied. We obviously work quite closely with some of our federal partners. A lot of times it's the Coast Guard in cases of emergency, which is kind of unique to have that direct connection with a federal agency. We work with the state for permitting and funding for a lot of our projects. Seaport Economic Council has been tremendous to us in Plymouth, along with Housing and Development. We partnered with them on the T-Wharf replacement and also a number of dredging projects throughout the harbor. So we have communication with the state, the environmental police. We work very closely with them. And then locally, pretty much every department in town.
Wow.
Because it is such a varied job. We work with obviously police and fire, but then on the permitting side, Conservation Commission, planning. It's really interesting. I love the work that we do because it is so varied. So it's never the same thing each day. And obviously, I have the opportunity to work with and meet a lot of really great people in the process.
Well, and people of all ages, residents, tourists, you educating, I'm sure, adults, teenagers, and really also kids about, the future and taking care of things and also being safe. When we talk about safety, we've gotten a lot of questions and concerns about the decommissioning of the Pilgrim nuclear plant. Holtec is the company that's doing that work at this point in time. In the near future, actually, Senator Markey is having a field hearing here in Plymouth to listen to his committee, to really listen to folks to kind of make the process better going forward, sort of an outreach about how this is working, what changes might be made in the future. It won't necessarily be done in time to affect Holtec, but that's been part of the conversation. I've also been having meetings with legislators on both sides of the canal, the Cape delegation, the Plymouth delegation, the federal delegation, the state folks. So your input in terms of that operational piece and your experience is really, I think, something that people are interested in. So what are your thoughts?
So obviously we're advocates for the harbor. There's no place I would rather be and boaters would rather be, and even non-boaters, people that are just down on the waterfront overlooking the bay. I think it's that's obviously one of our crown jewels here in Plymouth, and so there's obviously a number of different functioning industries, not only the tourism piece, but we have commercial aquaculture that occurs in the 3-bay system, which is Plymouth, Kingston, and Duxbury. And we found a number of times, just because the town line runs somewhere down through the water, doesn't much matter. It's a
not
shared
marked,
bay.
right? It's not like a flag.
Right.
Right.
So anything we do here in Plymouth or over in Duxbury, it affects the entire system. So we have to be quite cognizant of that. And obviously then out into Cape Cod Bay as well. We have a number of communities that border the bay, and anything that happens in the bay could affect any one of those communities. So some of our biggest industries, aside from tourism, which I think everybody understands for Plymouth is number one. But
certainly when they try to park, right?
yes, absolutely. Aquaculture has been kind of a budding industry for Plymouth. Duxbury has done quite well over the years, but Plymouth has sort of started to follow their lead. We have about 32 licensed growers, and each one of those kind of represents a small business, which is really great. We started about 11 years ago, were the first licenses that were approved.
It's quite a process for folks to go through.
It is, and we've tried to assist them in doing that. We actually created an aquaculture development zone to try and ease the burden of permitting on the individual and allow the town to sort of check some of the boxes. So when they were issued a site, they were already that much further ahead.
Great.
So that industry is sort of, no pun intended, growing. And amongst the 3-bay system, they could represent $5 to $6 million annually in landings in Massachusetts for oysters. Is the most. That's what most people are raising on the farms.
Wow, and people actually like to know where they're from,
Sure.
if they're from Plymouth, obviously, or out of state. What has been the talk or concern about Holtec's options that they've put out, one of which was dumping radioactive material into the bay? And they have agreed to essentially, be on a hiatus in terms like sort of a freeze, not to do anything until next year. Sure. But we're already, it's almost May 1st. So what are the things that you've been fielding?
So I think the concern has been, first of all, awareness. I think initially it was quiet, and then as more and more people started to hear about it, we fielded a lot more calls and questions on really the facts, like what's actually happening. the local harbor committee got involved as well, and there were a couple of gentlemen that kind of ran with it a bit, and Paul Quintal and Tom O'Reilly, and they worked really to get groups together on the pier a couple weeks ago for a pretty good event, great turnout, and I think the idea behind that was to raise awareness.
Sure.
I think when we would ask people what they think, it was a very one-sided, like, I'm shocked, like, why are we allowing that to happen? So it seems to me most of the feedback that I've heard is sort of one-sided. Nobody thinks that this should even be legal or an option. And I think the other piece to that is, if that happens, like once it's out, it's out. There's no way to sort of sweep it up or clean it up.
You can't take it back that easily. Right.
So I think everybody's a bit worried about that. And obviously the Lobstermen, I had mentioned Tom O'Reilly, and I know you have Bob coming up.
Right.
But that's, for Plymouth, probably that's our biggest commercial industry on the waterfront, is commercial lobstering. We probably have somewhere in the number of 35 to 40 commercial lobster boats in Plymouth. And as far as landings, I think a couple of years ago, that was also in about the $5 to $6 million worth of landings. And Plymouth has always been between number 2 and number 3 for landings in the state of Massachusetts for lobster. So we obviously want to protect that industry. A lot of our ground fishing fleet has decreased due to regulations, but lobstering has been thriving, and they've had some challenges which they've overcome, and they're working with the right whale advocates to protect right whales, and so they're doing their part. But I think in this case they could be impacted by this as well.
Well, part of what comes to mind as you're talking about various groups getting information and having conversations is that there's not only a need to continue to put accurate information out there and to have people weigh in, in terms of their concerns, but the synergy and the working atmosphere. You're just talking about the lobster folks working with the community folks. When you were talking about the group, I mean, that's sort of an ad hoc town group. Sure. NDCAP is a more official group. They're the citizens group that's tasked with, kind of an overseeing sort of role. And so there is a website with the NDCAP information and testimony as that comes out. And I just want to kind of put that out there on this episode, just so people have another way, if something that you've said kind of spurs some interest and some more questions, that's one place to get information. And there's also a schedule as to what might be coming up and going forward. I want to really thank you for being here, and with everything that you do. The fact that you're doing the outreach and the education is huge, and I'll be looking forward to speaking with you again not too long. Up next, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
We have Robert Ward, a member of the Board of Directors for the Massachusetts Lobstermen's Association, who you mentioned. His ship is based out of Plymouth Harbor. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Robert Ward, a member of the Board of Directors for the Massachusetts Lobstermen's Association, whose boat is based out of Plymouth Harbor. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
To come, the MLA and I appreciate any exposure we get to help out our industry.
Well, you have been so important for such a long time in terms of saving the whales, as we were mentioning, and MLA, Massachusetts Lobstermen's Association. So can we start, if you tell me just a little bit about yourself and your boat, and then maybe what you do with the association?
Okay, I've fished since I was 13 years old. As you know, my father said if I wanted to use his boat, I had to work at it. So we did that, and I sold to a local restaurant, and I worked my way through junior high, high school, college, lobstering, and then I fished for several years full time, and now I kind of do it in a part-time manner, but it's still a real business, and I work at it very hard.
That sounds like about 50 years.
It's, yeah, a little over 50 years.
And you go
yes.
out in all kinds of weather?
I used to. Now I'm getting a little older, and I might be a little bit more selective on the days I go. But yes, I mean, most of the guys go out in some pretty nasty weather. And they have to, and now because they have a limited season, which we didn't do before. We had open season all year. Now it's shut down for 3 months of the year due to the whales. And
What months is it, for folks who don't know? What are the shutdown months?
the shutdown months are February through April.
Okay, and the rest of the time you can go lobstering.
Yes, and most of the people finish by December. I usually come in around Christmas. It's usually the end of my season, and it's a little rugged to go that time of year, but you get used to it. Yeah, I've fished for a long time, and I fished before the power plant was there, and I know the area, and I've fished there a long time.
Wow, so you have experience before the Plymouth nuclear plant
Yes.
and after, and now you've sort of morphed into adding kind of a association role.
Right, yeah, I joined the association. I was a member of the MLA as a delegate for years, and then I became on the executive board about 7 years ago. And I'm also the treasurer of our foundation we have, which we use to promote learning things for people. We go out to different harbors, and occasionally we've gone to schools and things like that, and tried to educate the people as to what lobstering really is about. And but the MLA is very important. Its goal is to keep us fishing, and that's been a hard job lately. And we'll give all the credit to Beth Cassoni, who is our executive director, and she's done a great job.
She is such a dynamic person. So tell me a little bit about the changes that you've seen in the industry, especially recently, and what the challenges are for that.
Well, the challenges have been the fact that the legislation that have come through with the whales, and all the different groups and things that really want to stop us from doing fishing the way it's traditionally been done. And it is an industry that's traditionally been based as for I don't know how many years, but it's always been some part of our culture, and it's not a job that you can't do 9 to 5. It's got to be a passion. If you don't go out there 9 to 5 because it's just too hard. It's a lot of hard work. People don't understand. I have people that come into me and say, "Oh, how long does it take you to get ready? In a couple of days?" And I'm like, "No, I've got 18 miles of rope to go through. I've got 500 pots to fix. I got 2 boats to paint." And that's just the start. And then we've got to put it in the water and do all this stuff. It's not you put a trap in the water, go out and pull it and catch a lobster. Wow. It's a lot more work than that. And you have to, everybody has a crew, and it's just a lot more than people envision.
And what would you say are the most important things that the association is doing right now? And then I'd also like to talk about what the decommissioning of the plant has, spurred in the way of conversations and concerns.
Okay. Basically, the biggest thing the Mass Lobstermen's Association have been doing lately is litigation, which is costing us, more than we would like, and we've have to do a lot of that, and that kind of taken away from, what other things we could do, and but we've done it very successfully. We've done well. We've worked well with the Division of Marine Fisheries and NOAA and all those to try to make everything as safe as possible. Massachusetts has done more than any other state. We've done more than just about anybody else in the world to help, with the right whales. That's been our main focus lately, is to make it as whale safe as possible. And then, the decommissioning of the plant, it's a good thing. It'll open up some fishing grounds that we lost because of the the enclosures that they had. And then, the biggest thing that we're worried about is the fact that if they dump radioactive water into the ocean, how is it going to affect the environment? How's it going to affect Plymouth Bay and Cape Cod Bay? We don't want the community and the outside people to think that there's something wrong with the fishing industry in Massachusetts and Cape Cod due to the fact that there's now radioactive material. No matter what what it does, it's the just that people would have a stigma with our lobsters and shellfish and regular fish that comes out of there, and that's a major concern. We're a major contributor to the economy in Massachusetts and especially Plymouth.
Well, and I know you have an accounting background as
Yes.
well, which is, kind of the opposite of what I do, and so the numbers always amaze me. Give me a little sense of the scale. How many boats are in Plymouth Harbor, and what is the catch, or sort of what's been going on in terms of the economy?
Well, we generate somewhere between $6 and $8 million in the last recent years, and that's just a start. I always felt that we're the start of the food processing chain. We come in, I have the two different jobs, and one, I feel like I'm a necessary evil because I help people with their taxes. The other one, I feel like I'm productive because I'm bringing in a catch. It's going to a market. It's going out to the restaurants. It's going out to other people. We buy, gear and ropes and fuel and all these other things from everybody else. So we're the start of it. It all starts with us. If we weren't there, we'd affect, a bunch of people. We're the bottom of the pyramid.
You're the reason for that whole economy.
Correct,
You're the
right.
reason that there are folks making the equipment, and certainly continuing the historic value of lobstering in Plymouth and identifying Plymouth Harbor in that way.
Yeah, you've seen that, the other industries, the other fishing industries have become regulated to the fact that they're not there anymore, or the very, very few people fishing that because of the regulations and the fact that there's not a lot of fish left. But we've become very sustainable. We've done things to make sure that the lobsters survive. We don't take the smaller ones. We wait till they mature. We don't take the Jaegers. We notch them so they can continue to lay eggs and still be productive. We don't take the larger ones so they can mate with the bigger lobsters. We've done things for years and years and years to be more, to make sure that our industry survives and is productive.
That takes a lot of trust and coordination as an industry. I mean, you sort of the whole association, folks that are out there lobstering really have to sign on to doing it the hard way because of sustainability, really picking and choosing. And
we've had a lot of, Division of Marine Fisheries has been very helpful. We kind of monitor ourselves as an industry where, there isn't a policeman on every corner. The Division of Marine Fisheries is probably underfunded. They have about half of what they used to have for people patrolling, and that's a problem. But, we know, we as a group know who's not doing the right thing and, bring them in line
Sort of self-policing.
Yeah, we have to. It's been that way. It's been that way historically, and it seems to still be that way. And we keep the, most of the people out there are very, very good and they're very conscientious. We know the laws. We keep in track. We try to do the right thing. It's becoming difficult because the laws are confusing, and there's just so many of them. And this gear change with the ropes and everything, every year it's different, and every year we've got to retrain ourselves how to do it, and it's a lot of work.
It seems like it. As we sort of wrap up, what do you think is the most important message or something you'd like to see happen with respect to the decommissioning?
I'd like to see, there's got to be other ways for them to get rid of that waste, and I believe there is. And I'd like to see legislation either to demand that, and maybe the government help them. It's got to be all economics. It's a lot cheaper just to dump it there than to try to do anything else. If the government could come up and maybe help them to do the right thing, that would be productive. I know, in our industry, the government has come up with ropes for us and the breakaways, and they help us, economically to a certain extent. They're talking about, doing some other things for us, and that's been very helpful. In the small businesses, income margins are low, and you've got to have some help. In the bigger business, that Holtec's got to have looked at it. Oh, we'll just dump the water. There's going to be no cost, or very limited. And
what's really important about what you say is that Holtec in Plymouth is making this kind of a template about their process going forward in other states and in other communities. So that's why I'm so glad you came to give that unique perspective of the lobster folks and the sustainability of that entire industry. We are out of time, so we're going to have to continue at some. I've really appreciated it. In conclusion, I want to let everyone know that my office continues to monitor the ongoing developments regarding Holtec in partnership with the rest of the state and federal delegation, the Attorney General's office, the Departments of Public Health and Environment, and have come out strong in opposition to the dumping of radioactive material into our bay. And I would encourage anyone who's interested in learning more about this issue and the legislation that I have filed to visit my website, SenatorSusanMoran.com. So thank you to Chad Hunter, the Harbor Master for the town of Plymouth, and Robert Ward for the Massachusetts Lobstermen's Association for joining me in this episode. If you have questions or other topics you'd like to see discussed, or if you just need to reach out to our office, you can call 617-722-1330 or email susan.moran@masenate.gov. Thank you all for watching today. I'm Senator Moran, and I'll be in your corner.